Did you know that reading just one book a week can be up to 50 books a year? That's a lot of knowledge. But what books should you read? That's the problem facing every reader every month. Here is my February TBR in the hopes that it might help you figure out what to read in February. Given that 500,000 to 1 million books are published each year, and if you include self-publish on top of that, the number is actually closer to 4 million. It can be really difficult to prioritize what to read. Do you work on the books that you already own, or do you purchase the newest bestseller so that you can stay relevant? Personally, I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer to this question. How I handle it for myself is that my book clubs will typically read more newer, relevant works. And then once I'm finished with those books, I usually try to prioritize the books that I already own because in general, I am trying to be a more mindful consumer overall. So let's just get into what I'm reading in February. Let's start with what I am already in the middle of. So first we have Convergence by Sharon Green. This is book one in the Blending series. In a world of magical adepts, every 25 years the 5 greatest talents must be brought together, for only this powerful union of strangers can prevent the prophesied return of the evil ones who enslaved the land. As one, they must stand against the odious treachery of past masters and confront a fearsome depravity that hungers for their world. This book was originally published in 1996 and features a Tom Canty cover, and Tom Canty is a very prolific sci-fi fantasy illustrator. After browsing his list of works, I think the most famous series that he's known for is he actually drew some of the maps in books 3 through 5 of the Wheel of Time series, which is funny for a reason that you'll find out pretty soon. Honestly, I'm almost finished with this book and probably will have finished it by the time this video comes out. But since I haven't finished it yet, I'm including it in this video. I bought the first 4 books of this series at a used bookstore because I remembered that one of my best friends in middle school really liked this series, so I thought I'd give it a shot. If you've been following this channel for a while, you would know that I am trying to catch up on all of the magical readathon prompts that I missed during my hiatus, and I have officially started the 2024 adventuring map. The 2024 adventuring map starts you off being locked in a dungeon and you have to find your way out. So I have managed to find the exit to the maze that I am currently in, but I have to first disengage a complex magical lock that is on the exit of the maze. And the prompt to do that was to start or continue a series that intimidates me. So I chose The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan, which, makes the Tom Canty comment from earlier make more sense. This is book 3 in the Wheel of Time series. And in order to prevent spoilers for the first 2 books, I'm going to read you the summary for book 1 now. The Wheel of Time turns and ages come and go, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth returns again. In the third age, an age of prophecy, the world and time themselves hang in the balance. What was, what will be, and what is may yet fall under the shadow. When the Two Rivers is attacked by Trollocs, a savage tribe of half-men, half-beasts, 5 villagers flee that night into a world they barely imagined, with new dangers waiting in the shadows and in the light. While this series has long been considered a masterpiece for epic fantasy readers, I admittedly did not pick it up until the Prime TV show came out. I read the first book and a half in print, but ended over switching to audio because they are massive and were just taking forever for me to read. They're really big books with itty-bitty print, and I am a slow reader, and I didn't want to get stuck on them because getting stuck on a book is a sure way to put me into a reading slump. So I switched over to the new audiobooks read by Rosamund Pike. And I can definitely see why this book won the 2024 Audie Awards for Fantasy. Rosamund is phenomenal of what I've read of the book so far. And I'm curious, would you be interested in seeing a challenge video where I try to read all of the Audie Award winners from 2024? Let me know. I originally started reading this series to do a book versus adaptation, but quickly discovered that that just wasn't going to be possible for me because it was taking way too long for me to read the books. So by the time I watched the show and then read the 2 books that season would kind of be based off of, it would no longer really be relevant for me to do a book versus adaptation video to it. I believe I gave The Eye of the World 4 stars because while I really liked the Lord of the Rings tribute, it was almost a little too close beat for beat to Fellowship of the Ring. And what I liked most about it were the things that weren't Lord of the Rings about it. And then I gave The Great Hunt 5 stars because I feel like that was the book where they really started to do their own thing. So I'm actually really excited to continue this series, but I'm gonna take my time with it. Next up, I have started 30 Nights with the Billionaire by J.M. Snap, which has been on my TBR a couple times now. Regina Newman lived a solitary life, hiding her scars and past. She lived a simple life with no living family members and maintained a routine work schedule. But when a storm stranded her in a hotel with another passenger, her life changed forever. A cruel game between her heart and mind would keep her searching for the truth. Benjamin Cross, the hardworking CEO of Cross Industries, was used to getting what he wanted. However, there was one thing that he couldn't control: his severe insomnia. That all changed when he accidentally fell asleep beside a stranger. Sleeping was his ultimate vulnerability, and if this woman could cure it, he knew he had to keep her close by his side. When they blur the lines between work and pleasure, what consequences will arise? Is it purely physical attraction or something deeper? Is Regina simply a sleep aid for the wealthy tycoon? Or is there potential for something more between them? Honestly, I don't really even know how this book ended up in my Kindle. I think I picked it up on a Stuff Your Kindle event, but I can't be sure. It was just there. And I ended up picking this book for a magical readathon prompt because it was already in my Kindle and I didn't have to buy anything. So that's what I'm currently reading. Next up, let's go over what I have put on previous TBRs that I haven't started yet because I cannot get them in audio format. So we have Competitions by Sharon Green. This is book 2 in the blending series. I just talked about book 1. So again, to avoid spoilers for book 1, check out the summary of book 1 a couple minutes earlier in this video. One of the magical readathon prompts I have is to continue a series. So I chose book 2 in this series because it gives me a chance to work through my physical TBR on my bookshelf. So far, I am interested in continuing this series because I want more answers around the political intrigue that is centered around this story, but that's all I can really say about this book at this point in time. After that, we have My Happy Marriage, Volume 4, and here's the summary for Volume 1 to avoid spoilers. Considered nigh worthless for having failed to inherit the superhuman powers of the bloodlines into which she was born, Mio Sayamori lives her days unwanted and unloved. Her stepmother and very own father have little time or affection for her, and Mio must suffer being treated as a servant by her half-sister who, unlike Mio, is blessed with the unusual powers of their blood. Ultimately seen as nothing more than a nuisance and a drain on the family wealth, Mio is packed off to the Kudo house as a bridal candidate for its heir, Kyoka Kudo. Whispers abound about the Kudo clan, the most powerful in all the land, but will the allegedly cold and cruel house into which Mio aims to marry prove much warmer than the family she left behind? This manga series started getting released in the US when the Netflix adaptation came out. And I'm interested in reading this volume because season 2 of the adaptation just started getting released earlier this month. I loved the first season of this anime, and I've been really enjoying the manga series because it gives us a few more details that just don't get covered when you only have 20 minutes per episode. I know 3 of the 5 books that I need to read for book clubs in February, and the first one is The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud. This is book 1 in the Lockwood & Co. series, and I struggled whether to put it in my book club list or in my currently reading list, but I decided to put it in the book club section even though I'm already 2 chapters in because I'm reading it with some members on one of the Lockwood & Co. Discord servers that I'm in. I'll probably be working on this book for several months because we're only reading a chapter a week, but I have been enjoying that because it allows me the time to do a really close reading of the book, but I'm including it in my TBR even though it's going to take several months to finish because I think Lockwood & Co. needs more love in the booktube community, so here I am. Sinister problem has occurred in London. All nature of ghosts, haunts, spirits, and specters are appearing throughout the city, and they aren't exactly friendly. Only young people have the psychic abilities required to see and eradicate these supernatural foes. Many different psychic detection agencies have cropped up to handle the dangerous work, and they are in fierce competition for business. In The Screaming Staircase, the plucky and talented Lucy Carlyle teams up with Anthony Lockwood, the charismatic leader of Lockwood & Co., a small agency that runs independent of any adult supervision. After an assignment leads to both a grisly discovery and a disastrous end, Lucy, Anthony, and their sarcastic colleague George are forced to take part in the perilous investigation of Coombe Carey Hall, one of the most haunted houses in England. Will Lockwood & Co. survive the hall's legendary screaming staircase and Red Room to see another day? Of course, I got introduced to these books because of the Netflix adaptation, and I am so mad that this series got canceled on Netflix. I mean, you're talking, it had a 94% critics and audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it still got canceled. Just, Netflix being Netflix. However, there is a campaign to try to save the show, so if you're interested in seeing how you can save Lockwood & Co., the TV show, check out the link in my description box. And even though we're reading this slowly, I think one of the things I'm liking most about it, just in the 2 chapters I've reread so far, is that I am still picking up things, new things, even on my 3rd read through this book. Next up, we have Sea of Rust by C. Robert Cargill. It is 30 years since the humans lost their war with the artificial intelligences that were once their slaves. Not one human remains. But as the dust settled from our extinction, there was no easy peace between the robots that survived. Instead, the 2 massively powerful artificially intelligent supercomputers that led them to victory now vie for control of the bots that remain, assimilating them into enormous networks called One World Intelligences, OWIs, absorbing their memories and turning them into mere extensions of the whole. Now the remaining freebots wander wastelands that were once war zones, picking the carcasses of the lost for the precious dwindling supply of parts they need to survive. Brittle started out his life playing nurse to a dying man, purchased in truth instead to look after the man's widow upon his death. But then war came, and Brittle was forced to choose between the woman he swore to protect and potential oblivion at the hands of rising anti-AI sentiment. 30 years later, his choice still haunts him. Now he spends his days in the harshest of the wastelands, known as the Sea of Rust, cannibalizing the walking dead, robots only hours away from total shutdown, looking for parts to trade for those he needs to keep going. I honestly didn't know much about this book until it came up as a book recommendation for my book club, but I will also admit I am not always up on what is new and recent in books. And I was really intrigued by the premise of this book, though I will say with the current rise in AI, I maybe have trouble sleeping for the next couple of days after reading this book. And the 3rd book I know I have to read for my book clubs is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. One of the best love stories of all time, To Kill a Mockingbird has been translated into more than 40 languages, sold more than 40 million copies worldwide, served as the basis for an enormously popular motion picture, and was voted one of the best novels of the 20th century by librarians across the country. Gripping, heart-wrenching, and a wholly remarkable coming-of-age tale in a South poisoned by virulent prejudice, it views a world of great beauty and savage iniquities through the eyes of a young girl, as her father, a crusading local lawyer, risks everything to defend a Black man unjustly accused of a terrible crime. Like many Americans, I did read this book in school and watched the Gregory Peck movie. And I do remember that of all the books I was forced to read in school, this was one of my favorites. So I am excited to revisit this now that I'm an adult. Question though, has anybody actually read the sequel? Going back to the Magical Readathon, once I finished The Dragon Reborn, it is time for the spring semester at Aurelium Academy. Osmanthus, my readathon character, is headed into her 2nd year to become an herbalist. So this semester, like the previous spring semester, I have to take alchemy and restoration as classes. Starting with alchemy, Osmanthus has to learn how to cast transmutation circles, which means that I need to read a book that has a circle on the cover. So I chose The Exiled Queen by Cinda Williams Chima. This is book 2 in the Seven Realms series, so here's the summary for book 1. The Demon King features a former thief, Han, who's trying to provide for his mother and sister. One day, Han, who sports mysterious and certainly magical silver cuffs on his wrists, confronts wizards setting fire to a sacred mountain. Now possessing one of the wizard's amulets, Han faces more trouble than he could ever have imagined. imagined. One of my favorite book talkers has been recommending this series for ages, and I finally picked up the first book a few months ago, and I really enjoyed it. Even though it is a YA fantasy, the scope is much more epic fantasy in scale. It just deals with younger characters. The book that I'm the most excited to read this month is The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. What are you interested in reading this month? If you liked this video, check out my 5 best and 5 worst books of 2024 video here. Let's see what stories tomorrow brings.